I met Steve Messer about, and his sister, co-founder sister, Heidi, at shop.org 1.0, many, many moons ago. They had just founded a company called LinkShare that I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. If you know that, you probably also know they sold LinkShare maybe about a handful of years ago, and it was a very successful company even for 1.0. They built a tremendous company that delivered a lot of value to the e-commerce ecosystem out there. Steve is now chairman of Collective Eye, and introducing Steve is actually payback for all the keynotes and panels I did for Steve and for LinkShare over the years. So I'm excited to introduce my good friend and serial entrepreneur and chairman of Collective Eye, Steve Messer.
Well, thank you. How's everyone doing at Imagine 2012? Do I have to get Angry Birds to throw at you to get you excited? Come on, guys. So I'm here to talk about the most exciting subject of today, big data, because I know you all wake up in the morning and think, my data's getting bigger. I can't wait to talk about this. This is going to be exciting. I know that's how I feel, and Bob told me after he brushes his teeth, his data gets bigger. It's fantastic. So yeah, I figured what else could you ask for? So thank you for having me here. Thank you, Bob. This is my payback. So today I'm here to talk about a really cool subject, or at least what I think is cool. And I have a feeling, hopefully after this, you'll think it's pretty cool. So as Bob said, my name is Stephen Messer. I am vice chairman and co-founder of Collective Eye. So what we do is we provide business intelligence and knowledge as a service through a network that converts raw data into valuable business and marketing insights. So what that means is we basically try to help you answer important business questions. So today I'm here to talk a little bit about extracting value from data. Everyone's sort of heard about it. So let's see. What is big data? That is a term thrown around by almost everybody. But broadly speaking, when I mean big data, what I mean is data that's gone beyond the scale that a human can manage, whether it be through an Excel spreadsheet or whether it be through SQL queries or even just the interpretation of it. It's just grown too big. And so when you think about data, think about what's happened in the last few years, that exponential growth of data. What you've seen really is something interesting, which is we started off in Web 1.0 where we were like the offline world, trying to get access to information and guess what users are doing. But now you look, and almost everything a user is doing is being tracked. The Fitbit, whether it be Twitter, whether it be Facebook, whether it be Foursquare check-ins. Boy, consumers are just trying to tell us so much about what they're up to. In fact, there's been so much data produced in the last 2 years, and that exponential growth has really hit its full pace, that in 2011, more data was created than from all of the beginning of mankind until literally 2011. And that's pretty amazing when you think about it. That's astonishing. So it's no surprise when you think about what it's like for us on the other end of that, right? I mean, I feel your pain, right? If you think about that, we used to be able to use these things like spreadsheets and things like that we worked with, but we have gone far beyond that capability, but it hit us so quickly. So what I want to do is actually share a little bit more information. Big data is interesting in the sense that it will allow us to do things that we could never dream of doing before. In fact, McKinsey came up with this study about a year ago. And the study basically said, look, some of these major problems that are affecting the human race, things from HIV to pandemics to even waste, just pure waste that the Eurozone has, can be solved by using big data. But that's sort of an interesting philosophy. And it's true, and I really do believe we're on the verge of what the information revolution is all about. But there's a challenge behind that. Really, when you think about it, the challenge is that taking this vision of what you can do with big data and turning it into practice is a real challenge. And so when you think about it, that's really what we're here to talk about today. Right? If you could scroll ahead, sorry. Perfect. So to inspire these ideas, you have to actually move beyond the data itself. The data is there to answer big questions. And I believe that that's because we keep approaching this problem as a data problem. The data is not a problem. The problem is, what kind of questions can you ask that the data can help you answer? And answering the right questions is important because big data on its own is just relatively meaningless. Without any context behind it, you have no idea what you're getting, you have no idea what you're looking for, and that creates a lot of problems. So for those who are looking to change their business, it's essential to sort of learn how to ask questions well. And then to make the point around what I mean by asking questions, I want to use a good example. How many here flew here? That's what I figured, right? So this is going to be a good example, right? So let me use an example that you'll be familiar with, the airline industry. So the airline industry has a big data challenge, probably one of the biggest challenges that are out there. And that challenge is, how do I balance the need for safety and security and the need for convenience? Because you as a customer are trying to figure out, how do I get through this airport quickly? So they have to figure out, how do I screen away problems that exist, which can be terrorism, it can be other things. How do I screen it away and do it in an efficient manner? And that balance is a tough balance. If you think about it, there are over 3 million people who travel every day. JFK, where I flew from this morning, has over 140,000 people that go through the screenings each day. So the goal of maximizing efficiency and safety is always going to be at odds in the structure of the way it works today. So from a marketing perspective, there's a lot at stake. Think about what happens if there's just one bad experience, right? One bad experience can undo millions of dollars worth of branding. And that's a challenge that they have to struggle with. From a reputational standpoint, it's even bigger. Because if you get stuck on a line with tools like Twitter and things like that, I can broadcast my frustration in a way that can affect my brand in a way that's never happened before. And with competition from things like trains, autos, and even Skype as video conferencing, unless you're going to a conference like Imagine 2012, there's a lot of other alternatives. So uncovering the threats and operating a customer-centric business today are at odds. So let me give you a little example of how this problem is solved. Today, there are 3 options to solving the security problem. The first is random screenings, right? That's pretty much where you're used to, right? It's what makes the randomness is sort of I pick out someone randomly in the audience, and I go do a deeper screening on them. And that's sort of a fair way of trying to figure out how to spot people. The second way of dealing with it is screen everybody. Just line them up and screen them. And the third is really more of a methodical way of searching for people and finding the selected groups that cause problems. So let me walk you through what this means. Right? For everyone who traveled here today, a random search goes something like this. Take off your shoes, take off your jacket, take out your laptop, your little baggie with liquids, who hopefully fit in that little Ziploc thing. Walk through the metal detector, hopefully get through without a problem. If not, you get a pat down. Once you get through, quickly put your stuff back on because the metal detector and the X-ray machine are lining up. Someone behind you is pushing through and saying, let's get going. Get out of my way, hurry up. And everyone's getting annoyed in the process. Once you pass the screening, you realize as you're walking through, you see an elderly lady arguing with a security person because that too many liquids is her medicine. And you probably see a 5-year-old kid pushed up against the wall while someone checks his dinosaur bag. Right? Probably not the best approach, but it's the approach you have to do because it's random and it works for that purpose. In the meantime, how many times you walk through, you get to your gate and you realize, oh my God, I have my bottle of water with me. Enough times it happens, right? So that's an example of random. If you've ever walked through a random, you've probably sat back and said, where in the world is the intelligence around this thing? It's crazy. Right? Despite all this rigmarole, for some reason I have to put my laptop through the X-ray machine, but my iPad, take it through. No problems at all. I don't have to take that one out. There's a logical part of it that we just don't get, right? And so that, we're focused on things like the amount of liquids that are in my bag and things like that, but yet it doesn't stop people like the shoe bomber. So what else do we have? The second approach is essentially screen everybody. Right? If you scroll ahead, sorry. So the second approach is screen everybody. Security lines then become hours long. Everybody gets a personalized search. You go through they interview you personally. They check you out. They pat you down. They go through your luggage. And the goal is to eliminate the terrorist threat. The flip side of that is long lines. A huge amount of resources being used to try to screen for that one person who might be a threat to the flight. Well, the challenge there is that entire group, no matter how skilled the security official is, he's only skilled or she's only skilled to look for things that have been terrorist problems in the past. So they look for things like, oh, you've got a razor blade, or you've got, nail clippers. These are things that can happen. But of course, what we all know here as entrepreneurs are the past is the past. If you're good at what you do, which hopefully the terrorists are not, but if you're good at what you do, you innovate. You put bombs in shoes or in underwear, and you pass right through. And that's exactly what happened, right? They confiscate all the things that you want, but in the end of the day, the guy you want to get goes right through. So that's a challenge with solving it, which is just screening everyone doesn't necessarily solve your problem. So let's go to the next slide. The next slide is a little differently. Here is an example from El Al. El Al is a 30-plus-year-old airline targeted by quite a lot of terrorists. And they're known for being one of the safest, most secure airlines in the industry. And they're known for that because they take a very different approach to analyzing behavioral patterns to try to find the people that they should focus on. What they do is they focus on who are the types of people and what are the types of behaviors that would lead someone to believe there might be something wrong. They don't focus on randomness. They don't focus on screening everybody, including the little 5-year-old with his backpack. They focus on weird and strange patterns that would surface that something is not right. So let me give you a little example. This is a great data example that I personally love. So Isaac Yeffet, who's the former head of security for El Al, shared this great story of a German man smuggling what he thought was drugs from Zurich to Israel. His luggage passed through the security without any problems. But an El Al agent asked a very simple question. Why would someone who lives in Germany buy their ticket in Switzerland to fly to Tel Aviv? So they pulled him aside, and they began asking him questions. But they asked him lots of random questions, questions that he wasn't prepared for. He was a drug smuggler. What do you think he was prepared for? Drug questions. So he had those down cold. But when they asked questions like, why did you buy your ticket in Switzerland, it caught him off guard. And he broke down. And when they opened up his bag, they didn't find drugs, they found explosives. Now you can imagine how this smuggler felt about his employer. Wasn't the happiest guy on the planet. And so he happily shared a lot of information because what was interesting was the data surfaced a strange pattern that allowed the El Al security agent to find something that even the person, the employee in this case, didn't realize. So that's a good example. So to be clear, the Israeli method is not profiling, because in the sense that it applies to racist stereotypes to determine on-site who to screen and who to hassle before getting on a plane, it's not about singling out an ethnic group at all. What it is making assumptions on flawed information like on flawed information like race or style of dress does not lead to any intelligent risk assessment. In fact, it's the complete opposite. Those judgments are no better than random searches based on biased information. What it is using the data to spot patterns that will lead to intelligent decisions, but also lead a highly trained person on the other end to interpret the data to make a better decision. And so that's really what we're trying to do with big data. The goal of big data is to answer questions to eliminate a lot of the gut decision. When we make decisions, historically we have been rewarded for making decisions on very little information that is directional at best. It's historical. But our goal is to try to get you away from that. So let me translate that now from sort of the land of air traffic control and air safety into business. Because I think this example really applies to what you go through every day. So let's start with the first one. Most companies today are random screeners, the first example that we gave you of their business data. They rely on what happened in the past. They rely on things like Google Analytics or spreadsheets that they've determined where they've taken sample sets of data or things that they've used in the past as a way to get a good sense of sort of what's going on. And what's happened is they can no longer handle this huge amount of data, so they simplify problems to the smallest possible way to try to get their hands on it. But they're left to make big assumptions in that case then about their business that do little to improve it and can actually hurt it. In fact, one of the most unique things that you learn is that people always look for the upside in data. They're mining for gold, looking for that needle in a haystack. But they're not necessarily realizing that there come with some risks with that. So there's a temptation to fixate on the size of data or to get bogged down in granular details. Of focusing on sort of containing the data or pulling one thing out and thinking I've got some unbelievable genius. But you have to be very careful about that. The second group of customers try to do the other, which is control everything. That's where they screen everybody. So they're going out and trying to figure out, how do I build systems and build these unbelievable technology systems to control every aspect of the process? How do I capture the data? How do I store the data? What do I do with the data? Then how do I hire data scientists, as many as I can find? And their goal is to get control over this, because their hope is that they're going to have better insights. But unfortunately, this approach is extremely expensive, highly inefficient, and almost impossible to execute, mostly because it's not their core competency. They're essentially trying to create two businesses at once. And so what ends up happening is, when you look at the statistics, 70% of companies fail when they try to build these things on their own. And if you think about it, it's millions and millions and millions of dollars. So even if half of that stat is wrong, well, it's still millions of dollars wasted. So what most people don't recognize is the downside of getting it wrong. So with big data, everyone is focused on finding gold in a pile of dirt. And the downside of having a poor process in place for finding that gold can be damning. So I mentioned earlier that about 213,000, I'm sorry, I gave the JFK, but 213,000 people travel through Heathrow. Overlooking an important correlation or implementing a bad process for screening can eviscerate millions of dollars spent on a brand. Think about the last bad flight you guys had, right? How long did it take before you sent that out to everybody? So that's the same thing that can happen with your business. So when you think about it, big data is worthless until it's scalable, accurate, and it's a process for managing the intelligence you use to help your teams make better decisions and make better judgments. So why is it important that we get big data right? When it comes to business, every process in an organization can benefit from technology that produces real insights. Whether it's your supply chain or whether it's a way to acquire customers, it's important to do. Right now, humans are trying to process data, but the sheer volume is just overwhelming. It's beyond what humans were designed for. And the flaws in our assumptions are now coming out in ways that really affect our customers in a negative way. So with a more strategic approach to big data, the size of data should no longer be an issue. What I really encourage everyone to think about are, what are the big questions that data can help them answer that could change their business? So in essence, what you see are the rise of new networks. So I've sort of put this in here to give context. We've watched networks time and again on the internet really win. And you've seen networks around social networks, which we're all waiting for the big Facebook IPO. We've seen advertising networks really grow, and they've become extremely important. Transactional networks like Magento are so critical to success. It's what brings us all here together in such an unbelievably amazing event. But we also think there's now a rise of the knowledge network. And knowledge is critical for making better judgments and growing. So I guess what I want to leave you with is the importance of figuring out how questions can be answered by big data, and having new technologies in place that help you subsidize your thinking frees you up for the creativity that allows you to actually go about and find incremental edge and find incremental advantage. And I would argue that we're now learning a new set of skills, which is no longer the gut response, the interpretation of lots of little pieces of data and our experience to give us guidance going forward, but we're learning actually how to ask good questions, and we're going to need to learn how to use in the data in a more intricate way to provide us better insights, mostly to allow us to do things that are purely creative work that will hopefully take us into a new place. And I have no doubt, if we do this well, that when I come back in 2022 for what will be probably the Madison Square Garden version of the Magento conference, that we will all have come up with very new and very unique ideas. Data frees us up from our biases. Data allows us to see things as they truly are, not what we think they are. And what that does is really open us up to think about what the world could be. So what I hope I leave you with today is not a fear of data. I didn't try to bring out any words like Hadoop or things like that, which I don't think are helpful. What I hope I've done is tell you that you, the amazing entrepreneurs in this room, the people who have created this amazing industry and worked with Magento to build something that is truly spectacular for your customers and for yourself, are hopefully going to be enabled to come up with things that just revolutionize the next decade and the decades to come. So what I really would like to leave on is to say, as an entrepreneur to other entrepreneurs in this room, thank you for letting me come up here and share a little bit of what I see as a vision for where the world of data is going. Thank you for the opportunity to let me participate in such an amazing and vibrant community of entrepreneurs. And really, I wish you all the same luck that I hope you all wish me, and I hope we can build something fantastic together. So thank you for the time. And thank you, Bob.